I found my Apache neighbor's lost dog, and she said, "What reward do you want? A kiss, maybe?" He had chosen the small desert town because he wanted silence, not people. After years of crowded streets, loud voices, and long days that never seemed to end, he wanted a place where the wind could be heard and the sky felt wide and open. The house he rented sat near the edge of town, close to open land that stretched far into the distance. From his porch, he could see hills rising like gentle shadows against the morning light. Every day, the sun climbed slowly, painting the land in soft gold and pale orange. It felt like a place where time moved at a slower and kinder pace. His days followed a simple rhythm. He woke early, made a small cup of coffee, and sat outside to watch the world wake up. Birds crossed the sky in quiet lines, and the air carried the smell of dry grass and earth. Sometimes a distant truck passed on the main road, but most of the time there was only calm. He liked it that way. He was still learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. One morning, as he stepped down from his porch, he noticed something moving near the fence. At first he thought it was a shadow or a bird, but then he saw a small dog standing still, looking around as if unsure where it was. The dog's fur was dusty and its ears were low. It looked tired, but not scared. It took a few careful steps forward, then stopped again, watching him closely. He stayed still, not wanting to frighten it. He spoke softly, his voice gentle and slow. The dog tilted its head, as if trying to understand. He walked back inside and filled a small bowl with water and another with some food he kept for the stray animals he sometimes saw near the town. When he placed the bowls near the fence and stepped away, the dog approached carefully, sniffed the air, then began to drink and eat. As he watched, he noticed a collar around its neck. It was old and worn, but there was no tag. That told him the dog belonged to someone nearby. The town was small and people usually knew each other. He felt a quiet sense of purpose rise inside him. He would help the dog find its way home. He decided to walk around the nearby homes. He kept the dog close, calling softly so it would follow. The dog stayed a few steps behind him, trusting but still careful. The road was made of packed dirt, and his footsteps left light marks behind him. The sun was higher now, warming the ground and the air. The first few houses were quiet. He knocked gently on doors, but no one answered. Some homes had small gardens, others had old chairs on their porches. He could tell people lived simple lives here. He kept walking, the dog's small paws tapping softly against the ground. After a short while, he saw a young woman standing near her fence. She looked worried, her eyes scanning the open land as if searching for something. Her hair was tied back, and her clothes were simple and clean. When she saw him and the dog, her face changed in an instant. Her worry turned into surprise and then into relief. She ran forward, calling the dog's name. The dog lifted its head and barked once, then ran to her. She knelt down and hugged it tightly, pressing her face against its fur. He stood back, watching, feeling like he was seeing a small but important moment. When she stood up, she looked at him with a wide smile and eyes that still carried a bit of water from her relief. She thanked him, her voice full of warmth. She explained how the dog had wandered off earlier that morning and she had been searching everywhere. She had feared something bad had happened. He told her where he had found the dog and how it had come to his fence. They talked for a few minutes, standing in the soft sunlight. He learned her name and that she had lived in the town most of her life. She spoke about her family, about the land, and about how much the dog meant to her. The dog had been with her through many seasons, through changes in her life, and through times when she felt alone. He shared a little about himself, about moving to the town to find peace and start over. He didn't go into too much detail, but she listened with care, as if every word mattered. There was something about the way she looked at him that made him feel seen, even though they had just met. Before they parted, she thanked him again. She said that kindness like his was not forgotten in a small town like this. He felt a quiet warmth in his chest as he watched her walk back to her home, the dog trotting happily beside her. The rest of the day felt different. The town seemed less empty, the sky less distant. He went about his simple tasks, but his mind often returned to the moment they had shared. He thought about her smile, the way she had held her dog, and the sound of her voice when she spoke about her life. The next morning he found himself looking down the road more than usual. He didn't know why. He told himself it was nothing, just a habit from the day before. Still, when he saw her walking by with the dog, he felt a small spark of happiness. She waved, and he waved back. Over the next few days, they began to talk more often. Sometimes it was just a short greeting. Other times they stood by the fence and spoke about simple things. She told him about the town's small events, about the changing seasons, and about her plans for the future. He told her about the city he had left behind and the peace he was trying to build in this new place. he learned that she valued her roots deeply. She spoke about her traditions and the stories passed down in her family. She talked about how the land was more than just ground beneath her feet. To her, it was memory, history, and belonging. He listened, realizing how little he knew about that kind of connection to a place. One afternoon, the wind picked up, and dust moved across the road in soft waves. They stood near the fence, watching the sky grow cloudy. She laughed when the dog tried to chase the moving dust, jumping and spinning in circles. The sound of her laughter felt light and easy, like it belonged in the open air. He found himself laughing too, something he hadn't done much since he moved there. The moment was simple, but it felt full. He realized that he was no longer just passing through the town. He was becoming part of it, one small connection at a time. As the days turned into a gentle pattern, he began to understand that the dog had brought more than just a reason to meet his neighbor. It had opened a door to a new chapter in his life, a chapter where the quiet town was not just a place to hide from the past, but a place to build something new. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in deep orange and soft pink, he sat on his porch again. The air was cool, and the land was calm. He thought about how a single morning, a small dog near a fence, and a simple act of kindness had changed the way he saw the town and his own life. He didn't know what the future would bring. He didn't know how their connection would grow or where it would lead. But for the first time in a long while, he felt something close to hope. Not a loud or sudden kind of hope, but a quiet one, like the steady rise of the sun each morning. The morning sun spilled over the desert hills, casting warm light across the quiet town. He woke slowly, feeling the calm that had begun to settle over his life. The air smelled dry and earthy, carrying faint hints of sage and wild grass. Today, like many mornings before, he stepped outside onto his small porch, holding a cup of coffee, and let the quiet embrace him. But there was a new sense of anticipation now, a gentle feeling he could not ignore. He thought about the dog, about how happy it had been to return to its home, and about the woman whose eyes had shone with relief. There was a quiet curiosity in him. He wanted to see her again. Not long after, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps on the dirt road. She appeared, the dog bounding ahead of her, wagging its tail. When she saw him, her face brightened. She waved, and he waved back. For a few moments, they simply watched the dog chase a small tumbleweed rolling across the road. The sight made them both laugh quietly. It was easy, natural, and comforting. He realized that these simple, shared moments were beginning to matter more than he had expected. "Good morning," she called, smiling. Her voice had a gentle warmth that seemed to fit perfectly with the desert morning. "Good morning," he replied. He felt his lips curve into a smile, though he could not explain why. The dog barked once and ran in circles before returning to her side. "You know," she said, crouching down to scratch behind the dog's ears, "I don't think it has ever been happier than the moment it came back to me. You really helped more than you know." He shook his head, feeling slightly embarrassed by the praise. "It wasn't much. I just noticed it and gave it some food." She laughed softly. "Sometimes what seems small to one person can be enormous to another." The words lingered in his mind. He thought about how easy it had been to overlook kindness in the past, how busy life had made him forget small gestures. But here, in this quiet place, he began to understand how meaningful even little acts could be. He felt a small shift in himself, a subtle change in the way he wanted to live. Over the next few days, they continued to meet by chance along the road or near the fence. Sometimes they would stop for a brief conversation. Other times they walked together along the dusty lanes of the town, letting the dog roam ahead while they talked. They shared stories about themselves in a gentle rhythm. He spoke sparingly about his life in the city, about long days filled with noise and deadlines, about moments when he had felt lost despite being surrounded by people. She listened carefully, without judgment, nodding at times, smiling at others. In turn, she spoke of her life in the town, about her family and the small routines that gave her days meaning. She spoke of the dog as if it were a member of the family, recounting funny moments, small mischiefs, and quiet evenings spent together. He listened, fascinated by the depth of care and connection she had with the animals, the land, and her people. There was a gentleness in her way of speaking, a quiet pride in her heritage, and a thoughtful honesty that made him feel like he could finally relax and be himself. One afternoon, as the sun hung high and the heat began to touch the ground, she suggested they take a longer walk toward the hills on the edge of town. He agreed, glad for the chance to spend more time with her. The dog ran ahead, darting between small patches of brush, sniffing the ground and then running back to them, as if to check that they were still following. The trail was quiet, lined with low desert shrubs and scattered wildflowers that had survived the harsh sun. The earth smelled warm and dry, and the air was filled with the soft whisper of wind. As they walked, she spoke about her dreams, not just the ordinary dreams of daily life, but the kind that linger in the mind at night, the hopes she held for herself and her family. She wanted to preserve the stories and traditions she had grown up with while finding her own path, a balance between the old ways and the life she wanted to shape for herself. He listened closely, feeling a quiet admiration. It was rare to meet someone so connected to the land and the past, yet so ready to embrace the future. He spoke of his own aspirations as well, though his words were quieter, more hesitant. He had come here seeking peace, and now he found himself opening up in ways he had not expected. They walked in a comfortable silence for a time, letting the words fade and the desert speak for itself. The sun began to lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and gold. The hills took on soft shadows, and the air cooled slightly. They paused on a small rise, looking out over the open land. The dog lay panting at their feet, its tail wagging lazily. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly, her voice almost lost in the quiet. He nodded, feeling the same awe. "It is. The town, the hills, everything." For a few moments, neither spoke. The silence was not awkward. It was comfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people feel connected without needing words. He realized that this simple act, finding a lost dog, returning it, and meeting her, had led to something unexpected, something that felt rare and important. As they walked back toward the town, their steps slow and unhurried, he noticed how much he looked forward to these moments with her. Even in the quiet, ordinary parts of life, he felt a spark of excitement. They spoke about small things along the way. The changing colors of the desert flowers, the shape of clouds overhead, the funny habits of the dog. Every word seemed to deepen their connection, building trust and a gentle understanding. Back in town, they often lingered near the fence. Sometimes neighbors passed by, waving or greeting them, and she introduced him briefly, explaining how he had helped her find the dog. People smiled warmly, and he felt a quiet sense of belonging that he had not known he missed. The town, which had once seemed empty and distant, now felt like a place where life could unfold naturally. She invited him to stop by her home occasionally, not with ceremony, but with a friendly openness. He began to bring small items, freshly baked bread from the local store, a fruit or two, or something the dog might enjoy. She would accept them with gratitude, but more importantly, with a sense of shared understanding. It wasn't about gifts, it was about connection, about noticing each other and caring in small, meaningful ways. Evenings often found them sitting quietly, the dog resting nearby. Sometimes they spoke of ordinary things, weather, local news, the slow passage of seasons. Other times they spoke of hopes, fears, and dreams. In these conversations, he found a sense of calm that he had not felt in years. He realized that these moments, small and simple as they were beginning to shape his days in a way nothing else had. Over time, he began to understand more about her life and her values. She was proud of her heritage and the land she called home. She spoke about her ancestors, the history of the people who had lived on these lands for generations, and the lessons she had learned from them. He listened, realizing that the lessons were not just about tradition. They were about patience, care, and the quiet strength found in understanding one's place in the world. Through these days, he also learned about her sense of humor. She could make him laugh with small, unexpected comments, or with stories about the dog's antics. He found himself smiling more, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. There was a comfort in knowing that someone could bring such warmth without effort, without pretense. Their growing friendship began to affect how he saw the town. The streets no longer felt empty. The skies no longer seemed distant. He found beauty in ordinary things. A bird resting on a fence post, the glint of sunlight on a patch of desert, the laughter of children playing nearby. The town was alive, filled with small stories and quiet wonders that he had not noticed before. One afternoon, as the sun began its descent, he and she stopped near the dog park, watching the dog run freely. She laughed when the dog leaped into a pile of dry leaves, scattering them into the air. The sound made him laugh, too. In that moment, he realized that the bond forming between them was not forced or hurried. It was natural, growing from shared experiences, kindness, and a willingness to notice one another. By the end of the week, he felt a quiet shift in his life. His days were no longer just about finding peace alone. They were about sharing moments, small but meaningful, with someone who had already become important. The dog, of course, remained a happy presence, always ready to play, always connecting them in ways they both appreciated. As night fell, he returned to his porch, watching the desert darken and the stars appear one by one. He thought about the days past, about the laughter, the conversations, and the gentle trust that had grown. He realized that life in the town, once imagined as quiet and empty, had become rich with small joys and shared moments. He felt a quiet excitement for the days to come, knowing that the connection with her, started by the lost dog, would continue to grow and shape his life in ways he had not expected. It was no longer just about peace or silence. It was about companionship, trust, and the quiet comfort of being seen by someone else. And in that realization, he felt more at home than he ever had before. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the desert hills, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pink. He stepped onto his porch and took a deep breath, savoring the calm that had become a part of his days. The air smelled warm and dry, carrying faint hints of sage and desert grass. Today felt different. There was a quiet energy in the morning, a sense of possibility that made him feel alive. As he walked toward the main road, he noticed the familiar sight of her walking with the dog. The dog ran ahead in happy circles, barking softly at small birds and the occasional tumbleweed that rolled across the dirt path. She noticed him and waved. He waved back, a smile spreading across his face. The morning, once simple and quiet, now felt full of potential, as if the day itself was waiting to unfold with new experiences. "Good morning," she called, her voice gentle and bright. "Good morning," he replied, watching the dog chase its shadow across the ground. It was a small, ordinary moment, yet it held a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. The two of them began to walk along the path toward the hills, letting the dog roam freely while they talked. The air was warm, but the wind carried a soft freshness, making the walk comfortable and pleasant. She spoke first, describing the changing colors of the desert. The hills in the distance were painted with shades of gold and orange, and the sky above stretched wide and clear. She had always loved this view, she said, because it reminded her of freedom and possibilities. He listened carefully, noticing the way her eyes brightened when she spoke of the land she loved. As they walked, she shared stories about her childhood in the town. She had grown up exploring these same hills, learning the names of plants, the habits of animals, and the quiet ways of the desert. She described the small adventures she had taken with friends, the nights spent under the stars, and the moments of wonder that had shaped her life. He realized that she carried a deep connection to this place, one that went beyond memory. It was part of who she was. He told her about his own past, speaking slowly and honestly. He shared the challenges he had faced in the city, the long, crowded days, the pressure of work, the loneliness despite being surrounded by people. He spoke of how he had felt out of place in a world that moved too quickly, where small gestures of kindness were rare. She listened without judgment, nodding thoughtfully, her expression calm and understanding. The conversation flowed naturally, with moments of silence that felt comfortable rather than awkward. They walked along a narrow trail that wound through low desert shrubs and scattered wildflowers. The dog ran ahead, occasionally returning to check on them. Its playful energy reminded them both to enjoy the small moments, to notice the beauty in simple things. After a while, they reached a small plateau overlooking the town. The view stretched for miles, with houses dotted among patches of desert and hills rising in the distance. The sky was a canvas of soft oranges and pinks, fading gradually into the pale blue of the morning. They stopped and took in the scene, letting the quiet and beauty of the moment fill the space between them. "It's incredible," he said softly. "I never realized how beautiful this place could be until now." She smiled. "It's easy to forget when you're busy or distracted. But when you stop and really look, you notice everything. The colors, the light, the life around you. Even small things can be extraordinary if you pay attention." He nodded, thinking about how true her words were. He realized that moving here had given him a chance to see life differently, to slow down and notice details he had overlooked for so long. The dog barked happily, chasing a shadow cast by the morning sun. They both laughed to sound light and easy, blending with the soft whispers of the wind. As they began to walk back toward the town, she spoke about her hopes for the future. She wanted to continue living close to her family and her land, but she also wanted to grow as a person, to explore opportunities beyond what she had known. She dreamed of learning new skills, meeting new people, and making a life that honored her past while embracing what lay ahead. He listened, inspired by her courage and determination. In turn, he shared his own aspirations. He wanted to find a balance between work and peace, between solitude and connection. Moving to this town had been a first step, but he realized that true fulfillment would come from meaningful relationships and a sense of belonging. Talking to her helped him understand that he could build that life, slowly and carefully, one step at a time. They paused again as the dog ran ahead to sniff a cluster of wildflowers. The gentle rustle of leaves and the soft sound of paws on dirt created a peaceful background for their conversation. She laughed as the dog rolled in the dirt, its energy uncontainable. He laughed too, feeling lighter than he had in months. The simple joy of the moment reminded him why small pleasures could be so powerful. Walking further, they came across a small creek that trickled through the desert, fed by the early morning melt from the hills. The water was clear, and the sunlight danced on its surface. They sat quietly on a flat rock near the edge, letting the dog drink and splash gently in the shallow water. The air was cooler here, carrying a hint of moisture that made the desert feel alive and fresh. She spoke softly about how the creek had always been a special place for her, a secret spot she visited as a child when she needed time to think or dream. He listened, fascinated by her stories and the way she described the world with care and attention. It was clear that she valued moments of quiet reflection, and he felt grateful for the chance to share this one with her. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, and they shared small jokes and observations about life in the town. She teased him gently about his careful ways, and he laughed, feeling the warmth of friendship and growing trust. They found comfort in each other's company, discovering that even in silence they could feel connected. As the sun climbed higher, they stood to continue their walk. The town lay below, quiet and calm, the streets slowly waking with life. They followed the trail back, the dog trotting happily between them. Along the way, they noticed small signs of the changing seasons: flowers blooming in unexpected places, birds building nests, and the scent of fresh earth carried by the wind. These small details made the world feel alive and full, and they shared quiet admiration for the beauty around them. Back in town, she invited him to meet her family. He hesitated for a moment, unsure how to approach such a personal step, but she encouraged him warmly. They walked together, the dog leading the way, and arrived at a modest home filled with the sounds of daily life. Family members greeted them with friendly smiles, and he felt a sense of welcome he had rarely experienced before. The warmth of the household reminded him that belonging was built slowly, through kindness, openness, and shared experiences. Over the next few days, he continued to meet her and the dog. They explored more of the surrounding hills, shared meals at small local cafes, and attended town events together. Every interaction strengthened their connection, building trust and understanding. He realized that the town, which had once felt empty and distant, now felt alive and welcoming. The people, the land, and the quiet rhythms of daily life all combined to create a sense of community he had longed for, but never truly found. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned soft shades of orange and violet, they walked along a quiet trail. The dog ran ahead, chasing the last rays of sunlight, and they followed at a relaxed pace. The conversation was calm and thoughtful, filled with stories of past experiences, hopes for the future, and reflections on the simple joys of life. He noticed how naturally their conversations flowed, how easy it was to be open with her, and how much he valued her presence in his life. By the time they returned to the town, the streets were bathed in the soft glow of evening. They said their goodbyes with a sense of quiet warmth, knowing that their bond had deepened with each passing day. He watched her walk home with the dog, feeling a mixture of contentment and anticipation for the days to come. That night, he sat on his porch, looking up at the stars appearing one by one. He thought about the mornings they had shared, the walks, the laughter, and the quiet conversations. He realized that the simple act of helping a lost dog had led to a connection that was meaningful, unexpected, and deeply valuable. He felt a quiet hope for the future, a sense that life in the town was not just about finding peace, but about discovering the small, meaningful joys that came from friendship, trust, and shared experiences. He knew that their story was only beginning. The bond he had formed with her and the dog had created a foundation for something lasting, something that would continue to grow with patience, care, and attention. The days ahead felt full of possibility, each one a chance to explore life, connection, and the quiet beauty of the world around them. The days passed in a quiet rhythm, each one carrying its own gentle surprises. He had begun to feel more at home in the small town, but the warmth he felt now was not just from the place itself. It was from her. She had become a familiar presence, a constant in the soft flow of his new life. They met often, sometimes by chance along the dirt roads, sometimes intentionally, planning walks or sharing small tasks around the town. And always, the dog was with them, its energy a bridge that seemed to pull them closer together. One afternoon, she invited him to attend a small gathering in the town square. It wasn't a festival or a formal event, just a community meetup where neighbors shared stories, food, and laughter. At first, he hesitated. Large groups of people had never been his comfort zone. The city had taught him to keep to himself, to move through crowds without drawing attention. But she smiled, a gentle, encouraging smile, and said, "You'll see. It's easy here. You don't have to be anyone but yourself." That simple statement gave him the courage to accept her invitation. The town square was modest but lively. Tables were set with simple food, and neighbors gathered in small groups, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Children ran freely, chasing each other in circles, their laughter bright and unrestrained. The smell of freshly baked bread and sweet pastries filled the air, mingling with the dry scent of the desert dust. He felt a nervous energy as he walked beside her, the dog trotting happily at their feet. But the moment she introduced him to her family and friends, he felt a sense of ease settle over him. They welcomed him with smiles and nods, offering warm greetings that felt sincere and kind. Her family was gentle and curious. They asked him about his life in the city, about what had brought him to the town, and what he enjoyed about living there. He answered honestly, speaking in simple words, and they listened without judgment. He felt a quiet relief at being able to share without fear of misunderstanding. The laughter and easy conversation around him made him realize how much he had missed this kind of human connection. The city had offered him work and opportunities, but it had never offered this: warmth, acceptance, and a feeling of belonging. Throughout the gathering, he noticed her in small, subtle ways. The way she interacted with her family, moving effortlessly between them, listening carefully and speaking with thoughtfulness. The way she laughed freely, without reservation, yet always seemed aware of the people around her. The way her eyes lit up when she watched her dog play or when she shared a story. He began to understand that her presence was not just comforting, it was grounding. She reminded him to notice the small joys in life, to appreciate the quiet moments that often went unnoticed. They walked through the gathering together, occasionally stopping to greet a neighbor or share a word with a friend. He found himself relaxing in her company, the tension he often carried with him melting away. Her calm and thoughtful nature made it easy to be present, easy to enjoy the moment without thinking about the past or the future. For the first time in years, he felt entirely in the present, surrounded by people and experiences that were genuine. After a while, they found a quiet spot near the edge of the square, away from the bustle, but still close enough to hear the laughter and music. The dog lay at their feet, panting softly, content and happy. They watched the town for a while, noticing the small details. The children playing, the way the sunlight touched the rooftops, the gentle movement of the desert wind. The world felt alive and full of small, meaningful moments, each one carrying its own quiet beauty. "I like this town more every day," he said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed something like this until now." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the late afternoon. "It has its own rhythm," she said. "Once you start noticing it, you can't help but feel part of it. You begin to see people, not just places, and you realize the connection is more important than anything else." He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. He had come to the town seeking peace, but he was beginning to see that peace alone was not enough. He needed connection, warmth, and trust. And here, in her presence and in the quiet rhythm of the town, he was finding all of it. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the world in shades of gold and soft pink, they decided to take a walk along the path that led out of the square and toward the hills. The dog ran ahead, chasing the shadows and the small movements of the wind-blown leaves. They walked side by side, speaking in gentle tones, sharing stories of past experiences and small, everyday joys. She spoke of her hopes for the future, both near and far. She wanted to continue living close to her family, to honor the traditions and stories that had shaped her life, but she also wanted to grow and explore, to find new ways of being that were uniquely hers. He listened, inspired by her courage and determination. He realized that the path to happiness was not always simple, but it was made easier by having someone to share it with, someone who understood and cared. He told her about his own dreams, about the life he hoped to build in this town, and about the quiet desire he had to belong somewhere in a way that felt meaningful. She listened carefully, nodding and offering small words of encouragement. For the first time, he felt that his past mistakes and struggles did not define him. He could create a new chapter, one that was full of hope, trust, and genuine connection. They walked until the sky turned a deep shade of purple, and the first stars began to appear. The desert air grew cooler, carrying the soft scent of sage and dry earth. They paused on a small rise, looking out over the town and the surrounding hills. The lights from the houses glimmered softly in the distance, and the wind whispered through the desert shrubs. "It's peaceful here," he said quietly. "I don't think I've ever felt this kind of calm before." She smiled, her gaze sweeping over the landscape. "Peace isn't just about silence," she said. "It's about understanding your place in the world, feeling connected and appreciating what you have. That's what makes it real." He nodded, realizing how true her words were. He had spent so much of his life chasing goals and achievements, forgetting the importance of the simple things: trust, companionship, kindness. Here, he had found all of those in abundance. The dog lay nearby, its soft breathing and contented presence a small reminder of the chain of events that had brought them together. As night fully fell, they walked back toward the town square, the streets quiet and calm. The gathering had ended, but the sense of community lingered. They said goodnight with a gentle warmth, knowing that their bond had grown deeper through shared experiences, trust, and honest conversation. He returned to his home with a sense of fulfillment he had not known in years. Sitting on his porch, looking at the stars, he reflected on how far he had come. The small act of helping a lost dog had led to a meaningful connection, a friendship that was growing stronger every day. He felt gratitude for her presence in his life, and for the quiet moments that had allowed them to build trust, understanding, and a sense of belonging. The days ahead felt full of promise. He knew that life in the town was not just about peace and quiet, it was about connection, small joys, and shared experiences. And he also knew that the bond he had formed with her was something rare, something worth cherishing and nurturing. In the quiet of the night, as the desert air cooled and the stars shone above, he felt a deep sense of hope. Hope for friendship, for trust, for moments of laughter and quiet reflection. He understood that these simple everyday experiences were the foundation of a meaningful life, and he was grateful to share them with someone who valued them as much as he did. And so, Part 4 closed with a sense of quiet contentment, with a growing understanding that life's most important treasures were often the simplest: a dog's loyalty, a friend's kindness, a shared sunset, and the trust that grew quietly, day by day. He felt ready to continue this journey, knowing that the days to come would hold more stories, laughter, and gentle moments that would shape the life he was building in this small desert town. The sun rose gently over the town, casting soft golden light over the rooftops and the hills beyond. He stepped out onto his porch, holding a warm cup of coffee, and let the morning air fill his lungs. It was quiet, but not empty. The town had begun to feel like home, a place where life moved slowly enough to notice the small joys, the song of birds, the scent of desert sage, the distant laughter of children playing in the streets, and, most importantly, it had begun to feel like a place where he belonged. As he walked down the dirt road, he spotted her in the distance. She was standing near the fence, the dog happily running circles around her feet. She noticed him and waved, a bright smile spreading across her face. He smiled back, feeling the warmth of the morning and the comfort of her presence. The dog ran up to him, tail wagging energetically as if inviting him into the small circle of life that she had so carefully built. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice carrying the same gentle warmth it always did. "Good morning," he replied, bending slightly to scratch the dog behind the ears. The dog barked happily, then trotted back to her side. They began walking together along the familiar trail that led toward the hills, their footsteps quiet against the soft dirt. The morning light painted the world in shades of gold and pale green, and the air was filled with the subtle sounds of desert life. As they walked, she spoke about the small events of the past few days, the neighbors they had seen, and the little joys she had noticed around town. He listened carefully, noticing how naturally her words flowed, how she observed the world with attention and care. It made him see things differently, too. The way the light glimmered on a patch of wildflowers, the gentle movement of the wind through the trees, the quiet rhythm of life that he had almost forgotten existed. They reached a small clearing near the hills, where the dog ran freely, chasing a small tumbleweed rolling across the ground. She laughed as it jumped and spun in the air, its energy contagious. He laughed too, feeling lighter than he had in years. Moments like this reminded him why he had moved to the town. Not to escape life, but to finally notice it, to be a part of it in a way that felt real and meaningful. Sitting on a flat rock in the clearing, they watched the dog play. She spoke softly about her hopes for the future. She wanted to honor her family and her heritage, to keep the stories and traditions of her people alive, but she also wanted to grow in her own way, exploring new possibilities while staying true to herself. He listened closely, admiring her strength and clarity. She seemed to have a quiet certainty about who she was and what she valued, and that inspired him. He shared his own thoughts in return. He spoke about the life he had left behind, the chaos and noise of the city, and the sense of disconnection that had followed him for so long. He spoke honestly about his hopes for a calmer, more meaningful life, one where small moments and real connections mattered more than deadlines or achievements. She nodded, listening without judgment, offering gentle encouragement with her words and her presence. The dog returned to them, lying at their feet, panting softly. Its small, joyful presence reminded them of the chain of events that had brought them together: the lost dog, the morning of uncertainty, and the simple act of kindness that had started it all. They shared a quiet smile, understanding that sometimes life's greatest changes begin with the smallest actions. As the day progressed, they walked back toward the town together. The streets were quiet now, the sun high in the sky, casting long shadows behind the buildings and trees. They noticed neighbors tending to gardens, children running along the sidewalks, and the faint sounds of music drifting from a nearby home. The town felt alive, filled with ordinary beauty that had taken on new meaning because of the moments they had shared. She suggested they stop at a small cafe that overlooked the main street. He agreed, happy for a chance to sit, rest, and enjoy the simple comfort of food, drink, and conversation. They ordered drinks and small pastries, settling at a corner table where they could watch the world go by. She spoke about local events, the history of the town, and the quiet ways in which the community supported each other. He listened intently, feeling grateful for the chance to be part of a place where people genuinely cared about one another. Between sips of coffee and soft laughter, they shared stories of the past, from childhood memories to moments that had shaped who they were. He told her about the city's rush and noise, about times when he had felt invisible despite being surrounded by people. She shared tales of growing up in the town, of learning from her family, and of the ways she had found joy in small things. Each story, each word, brought them closer together, weaving a connection built on trust, understanding, and shared experience. After the cafe, they took another walk, this time toward the open fields that stretched beyond the town. The dog ran ahead, ears flopping as it darted through the grass. The sun began to lower, casting a warm golden glow across the landscape. They paused frequently, noticing small things: the color of the flowers, the patterns of clouds, the distant sound of a bird calling from a hilltop. Life felt expansive, yet intimate, as if every detail was meant to be noticed and appreciated. They came to a quiet stream that flowed gently through the fields. The water was cool and clear, reflecting the colors of the sky. They stood by the edge, letting the dog splash and drink. She laughed as it chased small ripples in the water, and he laughed too, feeling the joy of the simple moment. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet rhythm of life unfolding naturally around them. As the sun began to set, they found a small hill where they could watch the town below. The lights of homes glimmered softly, and the desert beyond stretched into gentle shadows. They sat side by side, the dog resting nearby, and spoke softly about the future. She expressed her hopes for continued connection, for moments like this that allowed them to learn about each other and themselves. He shared his own wishes, about building a life filled with meaningful relationships, trust, and quiet happiness. The moment felt both ordinary and extraordinary. It was simple, yet full of significance, the culmination of days spent noticing each other, sharing experiences, and quietly building trust. They didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. The small, consistent acts of care and attention had created a bond that was strong and lasting. As darkness fell and the stars appeared one by one, they walked back toward the town. The dog trotted beside them, occasionally looking up with a happy expression that seemed to reflect their own contentment. The streets were quiet, but the air was filled with a sense of life and warmth. They reached her home, and she smiled, a gentle acknowledgement of the day they had shared. "Thank you," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "For everything. For helping me, for walking with me, for just being here." He smiled in return, feeling a deep warmth in his chest. "I should be the one thanking you. For showing me how life can be simple, meaningful, and full of connection." The dog barked happily, as if in agreement. It had been the reason they met, the gentle spark that started it all, and now it had become a quiet companion in their shared journey. As he returned to his own home that night, he felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had known before. The town, once distant and empty, now felt alive and welcoming. The bond he had formed with her and the dog had transformed his perspective, showing him that life's most important moments are often the simplest: kindness, trust, shared experiences, and quiet companionship. Sitting on his porch, looking at the stars reflected in the desert sky, he reflected on how far he had come. He had arrived seeking peace, but he had found something greater: connection. He had found friendship, trust, and the gentle rhythm of life that he had longed for without realizing it. Each day had built upon the last, slowly weaving a story of warmth, understanding, and quiet joy. He thought about the moments that had led them here: the lost dog, the first meeting, the walks, the conversations, and the laughter. He realized that life was not about grand events or dramatic changes, but about noticing the small things, valuing connections, and being present in each moment. It was in these small details that life became rich, meaningful, and beautiful. Over time, their friendship grew stronger. They continued to explore the town and surrounding hills together, sharing ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they were shared. They celebrated small victories, comforted each other in difficult moments, and learned to trust one another. The dog remained a joyful presence, a constant reminder of how life's simplest acts can lead to lasting bonds. And so, as Part 5 closed, the story found its quiet resolution. He had arrived in the town seeking a new start, but he had found something even more valuable: connection, trust, and a sense of belonging. The bond with her, nurtured through kindness, shared experiences, and gentle understanding, had changed the course of his life. He had learned that the smallest actions, a lost dog, a kind word, a shared walk, can create ripples that transform hearts and shape lives. As night fully settled over the desert, he sat quietly, watching the stars above, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that this was only the beginning of a journey filled with simple joys, shared moments, and meaningful connection. Life in the small town had shown him that peace and belonging are found not just in solitude, but in the warmth of trust, friendship, and the quiet presence of someone who truly understands.